Okay, volume 3, Jenny. This is good, very good. Volume 3 of Frankenstein reveals the inevitable confrontation between Victor Frankenstein and the monster. This part of the novel unravels the bound destiny of the creator and the creature. Frankenstein's vain attempts to save his loved one illustrate that the only way to solve the lifelong conflict between the Prometheus and the creature is death. Why did Mary Shelley decide to put the story to such an end? I had to ask. Of course, I felt sorry for the loss Victor Frankenstein had to go through, and yet I couldn't help but sympathize with the monster more. My heart is overflowing with compassion when the monster says, "For while I destroyed his hopes, I did not satisfy my own desires. They were forever ardent and craving. Still, I desired love and fellowship, and I was still spurned. Was there any injustice in this? Am I to be thought the only criminal when all humankind sinned against me? All that it says is right. It is not fair at all to despise and put all the blames on the monster." Good, I think so. Kim Do-kyung? Third paragraph. The monster's final speech to Walton was also remarkable. Contrary to the tone of Victor's final speech, the wretch's final words expressed a tone of sorrow and remorse. He was truly sad that he committed such hideous actions, and although he blames society for alienating him, he does not take full responsibility. For example, when he murders Clever, he is heartbroken and overcome. He pities Frankenstein and even opposes himself. It shows that he really has a conscience. So since he is able to feel bad later on about ruining Victor's life, it actually has become a human. So to become a human is good. Kim Il-suk, Park Han-neul, Chad. Volume 3 of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. In Volume 3 of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Victor goes to Scotland to begin his task of creating the monster, a bride. As he's pondering on whether or not the monster will be worse than the first, he sees the monster watching him from the window. This drives him into a fit of rage, and he destroys half-finished monster. Upon seeing Victor destroy his would-be wife, the monster yells and runs off. He later returns and vows to make Victor's life so rich that the light of day will be hateful to him, so that he will be with him on the night of his wedding. He is successful, right? Monster is successful, right? Choi-hong. The best part I choose from Volume 3 is Chapter 6. It is the part just before the conclusion, so the mental conflict of figure's mind is in zenith. Of course, the happiest moment belongs to Chapter 5, but Chapter 6 gives more attention to me, etc. 장승우? Oh. There is great storm on the night of Elizabeth's death. The wind, which had fallen in the south, now rose with great violence in the west. The moon had reached summit in the heavens and was beginning to descend. Suddenly a heavy storm of rain descended. Interestingly, nature is used to imply future events. The wind represents sign of change that is about to occur. The absence of moon symbolizes the darkness that is about to cover Victor's life. Also, the rain signifies the repeated gloomy condition when the creature appeared. Park Dong-gu. In this volume, it describes Victor's influence on Clever. Clever begins to express a great deal of interest in the sublime nature. Victor describes Clever saying, okay, etc. Kim Jun-yeop, Sarah Brown, and Choi Ji-won. Okay, this is your final assignment. 박동구? 박동구? I like the comments you made on the structure of the novel. Mary Shelley had many narrative conventions hitherto followed by earlier writers. Jane Austen had written many novels, but the area she covered was restricted to one or two families. Her realistic mode did not suit Mary Shelley. Since the novel is said to have originated in the so-called ghost story context, she fell back on Gothic tradition but altered it drastically, so much so that the novel, as it published, could hardly be called Gothic, for, with a few exceptions, there are no supernatural trappings, etc. Okay, good. Did you take it from somewhere or? Chehong? Chehong? The characterization of Frankenstein is amusing. I like the word amusing. The two main characters, Victor and the creature, are pretty rounded characters. Really? Rounded character. Rather rounded, I agree. They show us many aspects of themselves. Victor seems to be a good son, but is also a person who wants to kill his own creation. It is true that the creature is a brutal slayer, but it also has a beautiful soul in its deep heart too. I like this. Right. Good, good. Very, very good. 정성원. 정성원. Fourth paragraph. There is difference between God and Victor. They both are creators, but God's creation has grown successfully, while Victor's does not. In this respect, nature has power. Humans never reach. The creation is only God's area. In other words, it is nature's area. Humans never should do that. Really? Maybe A1, right? Kim Jun-up? Okay, last paragraph. 최지훈? Okay. Metaphor. Okay. Scientific metaphor implied in the story. The novel was written in 1880. At the time, society was overhopeful of science. The quest of knowledge was one of the most essential aspects of the time. So, there's the protagonist too in the novel. Frankenstein's focus is from past to future, but the success is rewarded as a horrible situation. It is Mary's question to the thoughtless development of modern science. 장승호, the contrast of parallel of nature to man. Nature is portrayed as the greatest and most perfect in the universe, and it conveys the power and flawlessness of nature's world. In contrast, Victor described people as half made up. It means that human beings are weighed down by concerns and countless flaws, such as vanity, prejudice, in comparison to nature's perfection. Really? Okay. 박진희? And 박진희? 김도경? 장주현? Okay. Actually, Frankenstein is a great novel. It's surprising that she did it in her teens, right? Began at 18 and finished around early 20s. And at first glance, it looks quite simple, but when you read it, it has a lot of devices in it. So it's wonderful. Also, it's poetic, so it's impressive. She uses several poets. She quotes poets, put the poems in it, and it perfectly fits in I like it. And also, it's surprising, the Frankenstein, the creature, right? Creature is, as you said, is rightly rounded character, right? Currently, the movies, horror movies, things like that, they are bad from start to finish, right? But here, it turns into human. It seems like human toward the end. It's wonderful, right? So, okay, now finally, we will go to D.H. Lawrence's best novel. Did you read the Mark Scorer's introduction? No, you didn't? Mark Scorer, the Mark Scorer, the introduction to this book.
Oh, there's an introduction.
Yeah. And also, this is very good because Scorer read the whole versions, the three different versions, the initial one, the second version, final version, and they are different. And actually, the three novels are three different novels. And the final one is, of course, the best one, and this is the finished one. Okay, chapter 1 is very short, and you will understand the characteristics of Lawrence's style. Okay, page 1, chapter 1. Look at the first paragraph. Ours is essentially a tragic age, so refuse to take it tragically. Essentially a tragic age, so we refuse to take it tragically. The cataclysm has happened. We are among the ruins. We start to build up new little habits, to have new little hopes. It is rather hard work. There is now no smooth road into the future, but we go round or scramble over the obstacles. We've got to live, no matter how many skies have fallen. What do you think? This is wonderful, right? And this is well written. Right? Scorer mentions something very important about this, about the subject, right? Second paragraph, this is more or less Constance Chatterley's position. It's closely knit, right? Closely knit. Introduction, and then this is Constance Chatterley's position, and then the adverb more or less. The war had brought the roof down over her head. Fantastic, right? And she had realized that one must live and learn. Very good introduction. Very good, very good. And then the story begins, right? She married Clifford Chatterley in 1917 when he was home for a month on leave. When he was home, what does it mean? He lived somewhere. He was soldier, right? So when he was home for a month on leave, they had a month honeymoon. Then he went back to Flanders, to be shipped over to England again 6 months later, more or less in bits. Wonderful, in bits. What does it mean? Terribly wounded, right? In bits, right? In Constance, his wife was then 23 years old, and he was 29. This is the whole story, the beginning of the story, and wonderful, right? His hold on life was marvelous. He didn't die. and the beats seemed to grow together again. For 2 years, he remained in the doctor's hands. Then he was pronounced cured and could return to life again with the lower half of his body from the hips down paralyzed forever. So this is the situation, how he is, right? This was in 1920. They returned, Clifford and Constance, to his home. They returned. So I like this style. Clifford and Constance returned to his home. This one. They returned, comma, Clifford and Constance, comma, to his home, comma, Rugby Hall, comma, the family seat. A lot of oppositions, but it's wonderful, right? This was in 1920. They returned, Clifford and Constance, to his home, Rugby Hall, the family seat. It reads like music, staccato, right? Right, emphasis, right? They returned, Clifford and Constance, to his home, Rugby Hall, the family seat. His father had died. Clifford was now a baronet, Sir Clifford, and Constance was Lady Charlie. Wonderful. Could you create this kind of sentence? Containing a lot of information and crispy and very beautiful. They came to start housekeeping and married life in the rather forlorn home of the Chartleys on a rather inadequate income. Clifford had a sister, but she had departed. Otherwise, there were no near relatives. The elder brother was dead in the war, crippled forever, knowing he could never have any children. Clifford came home to the smoky Midlands to keep the Chartley name alive while he could. He was now really downcast. He could wheel himself about in a wheelchair, and he had a bath chair with a small motor attachment, so he could drive himself slowly around the garden and to the fine melancholy park, of which he was really not so proud, though he pretended to be flippant about it. Having suffered so much, the capacity for suffering had to some extent left him. He remained strange and bright and cheerful, almost one might say chirpy, with his ruddy, healthy-looking face and his pale blue, challenging bright eyes. Actually, there are 3 versions, right? First version, and a very short one, and second version. This one is a blue-eyed, right? And another version, they were different eye colors, right? His shoulders were broad and strong. His hands were very strong. He was expensively dressed and wore handsome neckties from Bond Street. Yet still, in his face, one saw the watchful look, the slight vacancy of a cripple. Wonderful, right? Okay, I'll skip the last sentence in the next paragraph. But he had been so much hurt that something inside him had perished. Some of feelings had gone. There was a blank of insentience. No feeling, all right? Okay, on page 3, second paragraph from bottom, both Hilda and Constance had their tentative love affairs by the time they were 18. The young man with whom they talked so passionately, sang so lustily, camped under the trees, in such freedom, wanted, of course, the love connection. The girls were doubtful, but then the thing was so much talked about, it was supposed to be so important. And the men were so humbled and craving, why couldn't the girl be queenly and give the gift of herself? So what? They gave themselves to them, right? So they had given the gift of themselves, each to the youth with whom she had the most subtle and intimate arguments. The argument, the discussions were the great thing. The love-making and connection were only a sort of primitive reversion and a bit of anticlimax. And I'll skip 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth line. 4, of course, being a girl, one's whole dignity and meaning in life consists in the achievement of an absolute, perfect, pure, and noble freedom. What else did the girl's life mean? To shake up the old and sordid connections and subjections. And the next paragraph is a very important paragraph. It's about sex, right? And however, one might sentimentalize it. This sex business was one of the most ancient and sordid connections and subjections. Poets who gratified it were mostly men. True, women had already known there was something better, something higher. And now they knew it more definitely than ever. The beautiful, pure freedom of a woman was infinitely more wonderful than any sexual love. The only unfortunate thing was that men lagged so far behind women in that matter. They insist on the sex thing like dogs. That's the difference, right? Do you agree? And the woman had to yield. A man was like a child with his appetites, right? One of you talked about appetites, right? A woman had to yield him what he wanted, or like a child, he would probably turn nasty and flounce away and spoil what very present connection. But woman could yield to a man without yielding her inner free self. What do you think? Women can yield without yielding her inner free self. That the poets and talkers about sex did not seem to have taken sufficiently into account. Woman could take a man without really giving herself away. Certainly she could take him without giving herself to his power. Rather, she could use the sex thing to have power over him. I don't know. The opposite thing is happening in the Lidans 1, right? Lidans 1. For she had only to hold herself back in sexual intercourse and let him finish and expand himself without herself coming to the crisis. And then she could prolong connection and achieve an orgasm and the crisis while he was merely her tool. Okay, page 5, second paragraph. And if, after the roused intimacy of these vivid and soul-enlightening discussions, the sex thing became more... The end of the chapter, it had thrilled its own to a queer, thrilling body, a final spasm of self-worth, like the last word, exciting, and very like the row of asterisks that could be put to show the end of paragraph and the break in the theme. It's a description of what is happening between man and woman, right? As a writer, right? What the girls came, when the girls came home for the summer holidays of 1913, when Hilda was 20 and Constance 18, their father could see plainly that they had had the love experience, right? So you can see a woman before sex or after sex, right? Certainly, right? Also, man turns different. L'amour avait à passer par là. He was a man who experienced himself and let life take its course. As for the mother, nervous invalid in the last few months of her life, she only wanted the girls to be free and to fulfill themselves. Okay, page 6, second paragraph. It is obvious in them too that love had gone through them. That is, the physical. It is curious what a subtle but unmistakable transmutation makes, both in the body of men and women, the women more blooming, more subtly rounded, the young angularity softened, and the expression either anxious or triumphant. While the man, much higher, more inward, shapes of his shoulders and his buttocks less assertive, more hesitant. So what? They're different, right? Man and woman. According to Lawrence. And next paragraph. In the actual sex thrill within the body, the sisters nearly succumbed to the strong male power, but quickly they recovered themselves, took the sex thrill as sensation, remained free. Whereas the man, in gratitude to the woman for the sex experience, let their souls go out to her, and afterwards looked rather as if they had lost a shilling and found sixpence. It's interesting, right? Oh. Man, they lost sixpence, just found half of it, right? Half. I don't know. And next paragraph. However, came the war. Hilda and Connie were rushed home again after having been home already in May to their mother's funeral. Before Christmas 1914, both their German young men were dead. It's interesting, their reactions. Their lovers dead, and whereupon the sisters wept, loved the young man passionately, but it forgot them. Interesting, very realistic, right? They didn't exist anymore. What do you think? Husband dead. Actually, Lawrence's wife was what? D.H. Lawrence's professor's wife. And she gave birth to 3 children, and then she met D.H. Lawrence. They met, and they fell in love with each other, and they eloped. They ran away, and then she came back and got divorced, and they got married. And after D.H. Lawrence died, she married again, and also she had an affair with a man and things like that. So, very intellectual woman. Yeah. Okay. The second on page 6. Before Christmas of 1914, both their German young men were dead, whereupon the sisters wept and loved the young man passionately, but underneath, forgot them. They didn't exist anymore. And about Clifford, page 7, second paragraph from bottom. Clifford Chatley was more upper class. Connie was well-to-do intelligentsia, but he was, not the big sort, but still it. His father was a baronet, and his mother had been a viscount's daughter. And the last paragraph from bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. If the truth must be told, there was a little bit frightened of middle and lower class humanity and the foreigners, not of his own class. He was, in some paralyzing way, conscious of his own defenselessness, though he had all this defense of privilege, which is curious. Formal, right? Privilege after privilege, Lawrence used instead of comma or things like that, which is curious, but a phenomenon of our day. Okay, I'll skip one paragraph. Next paragraph. Nevertheless, he too was a rebel, rebelling even against his class. Or perhaps rebel is too strong a word, far too strong. He was only caught in the general popular recall of Young against convention, against any sort of real authority. Fathers were ridiculous. And the next few paragraphs are very interesting because it's ridiculous. For example, third paragraph. In fact, everything was a little ridiculous, or very ridiculous. Certainly everything connected with authority, whether it were in the army or the government or the universities, was ridiculous to a degree. And as far as the governing class made any pretension to govern, they were ridiculous too. So Clifford's father was intensely ridiculous. Interesting. ridiculous, intensely ridiculous. Um, Ridiculous to a degree, right? A little ridiculous, and things like that. Also, the last paragraph on page, the last sentence on page, final paragraph on page 8, final sentence. Everything was ridiculous, quite true. But when it came to too close, and oneself became ridiculous too, dot, 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 right? Very interesting, right? So on page 9, second paragraph, they were rather earnest about the tummies, the threat of conscription, the shortage of sugar and toffee for the children. And then, last sentence, to him, the authorities were ridiculous up over from the very beginning, right? Not because of toffee or tummies. Very good, right? Ridiculous, ridiculous, ridiculous. And then, okay, page 10, second paragraph. The gay excitement had gone out of the world, dot, 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 dead. Too much death and horror. A man needed support and comfort. A man needed to have an anchor in the safe world. A man needed a wife. It's interesting, right? So they married. And on the same page, last paragraph, Clifford married Connie nevertheless and had his month honeymoon with her. It was a terrible year, 1917. And a few sentences later, they were so close, he and she, apart from that, and Connie exulted a little in this intimacy which was beyond sex, beyond the man's satisfaction. Clifford, anyhow, was not just keen on his satisfaction, as so many men seem to be. No, the intimacy was deeper, more personal than that, and sex was merely an accident or an adjunct, one of the curious obsolete organic processes which persisted in its own clumsiness, but was totally necessary. Though Connie did want children, if only to fortify her against her sister-in-law, Emma. But already in 1918, Clifford was shipped home, smashed, in bits, smashed, right? The story goes back to the beginning, right? And there was no child, and so Jeffrey died of chagrin, disappointment. He died. His father, right? His father died of chagrin. So this is the beginning, wonderful beginning. So the next chapters, the rest of the story must be exciting and wonderful. Okay, why don't you do the summary and also write an essay about the best part after reading chapters 2, 3, 4, right? 3 chapters. Actually, the chapters are very short, so enjoy reading and bring it on Monday. On Wednesday, there'll be a conference. Okay, and let's. Okay, let's just go through the biography together. This is rather long, and D.H. Lawrence on the screen. D.H. Lawrence, David Herbert Richards Lawrence, was an English novelist, poet. He died in the early 40s, right? Oh, you like you like to have a look at handsome? Okay. Born in Nottinghamshire, England, and he died in Vannes, France, southern coast. And Vannes is a very beautiful place with less than 20,000 people. And a lot of people great people died there, found. And we are going to read this novel, Lady Chatter's novel. E.M. Foster, in an obituary notice, challenged this widely held view, describing him as the greatest imaginative novelist of our generation. Later, the influential Cambridge critic Lewis championed both his artistic integrity and his moral conscious seriousness, placing much of Lawrence's fiction within the canonical great tradition of the English novel. I don't know. I have no idea yet, but I seem to agree. We have to read the novel. Okay, I'll skip early life. Early career. Early career, okay. In the autumn of 1908, the newly qualified Lawrence left his childhood home for London. While teaching in David Road School, he continued writing. Some of the early poetry submitted by Jesse Chambers came to the attention of Ford Madox Ford, then known as Ford Herman Hooper, and editor of the influential English Review. Okay, Sons and Lovers, early work. In March 1912, Lawrence met Frida Wickley, née von Richthofen, with whom he was to share the rest of his life. 6 years older than her new lover, she was married to Ernest Wickley, his former modern language professor at University College Nottingham. Had 3 children. She eloped with Lawrence to her parents' home in Metz. Okay. From Germany, they walked southwards across the Alps to Italy in journey that was recorded in the first of his travel books, a collection of linked essay titled Twilight in Italy, and the unfinished novel, Mr. Noon. During his stay in Italy, Lawrence completed the final version of Sons and Lovers. Next paragraph. Lawrence and Frida returned to Britain in 1913 for a short visit. Lawrence Wickley soon went back to Italy, staying in a cottage in Fiascarino on the Gulf of Spezia, where he started writing the first draft of a work of fiction that was to be transformed into 2 of his best-known novels, The Rainbow Women in Love. Eventually, Frida obtained a divorce. The couple returned to Britain shortly before the outbreak of World War I, who were married on 13th July 1914. Okay. Exile. And later life and career. The Lawrences finally arrived in the U.S. in September 1922. Here, they encountered Mabel Dawes Luhan. He bought a ranch here. Prominence considered establishing a utopian community on what was then known as the 160-acre Kiowa Ranch near Taos, New Mexico. While in the U.S., Lawrence rewrote and published studies in classic American literature. A set of critical essays begun in 1917 and later described by Edmund Wilson as one of the few first-rate books that have been ever written on the subject. Death, philosophy, religion. politics, written work, novels, short stories, poetry, lyric criticism, Lady Chatterley's trial, right? He was tried. A heavily censored abridgment of Lady Chatterley's novel was published in the United States by Knopf in 1928. This edition was posthumously reissued in paperback there, both by Signet and Penguin Books. When the full unexpurgated edition of Lady Chatterley's novel was published by Penguin Books in Britain in 1960, so later than in the US. Various academic critics and experts of diverse kinds, Foster, Gardner, Hogarth, Williams, were called as witness, and the verdict delivered on 2nd November 1916 was not guilty. It's interesting, but this resulted in a far greater degree of freedom for publishing express material in the UK. The prosecution was ridiculed for being out of touch with the changing social norms. When the chief prosecutor, Mervyn Griffith Jones, asked if it were the kind of book you'd wish your wife or servants to read. What do you think? Do you want your wife or servant to read it? Interesting, right? Reputation. He was a painter, and a good painter. The collections are at the Humanities Research Center of the University of Texas at Austin, and also La Fonda de Taos Hotel in Taos, New Mexico. You can go there to have a look at the paintings. Okay, so much for today. Thank you.